Hello, everyone. My name is Ariella Wagner. I'm the founder of SunRay Construction Solutions, a national construction document service that has the absolute best software to help you secure your lien and bond claim rights. Today, we have another sensational webinar by the one and only Alex Barthet, who will do an incredible job introducing himself. The title of this great webinar is BOO, the scariest contract term that's in your contract and you don't even know it, especially today with the coronavirus and projects stopping and starting. This contract terms are absolutely essential. So without further ado, I introduce the amazing Alex Barthet.
Thank you, Ariella. My name is Alex Barthet. I am a board certified construction attorney here in South Florida. And today we're going to talk about the scariest contract term that is probably in your contract and you don't even know it. And more importantly, what you can do about it. So let's get started. So on today's agenda, we are going to talk about the one-sided contract, the types of contracts that come across your desk and why they are so one-sided. I'll tell you what the scariest contract provision is, and I'll tell you what you can do about it. And as a bonus, I'll talk about another very dangerous contract provision and what you can do about that. Of course, as we always do, we will answer any questions that you have at the end of the presentation. With respect to those questions, make sure that you use the go-to webinar chat box to ask your questions. Please do not include any names of people or companies in your questions. All right, so let's get right into it. So let's explain why there are such scary contract terms in your contract. And that's usually because the contracts are very, very one-sided. Where we see the most pressure brought to bear is for those that are subcontractors. You know, a subcontractor is typically caught between a general contractor's one-sided contract provisions on one end and a supplier's terms and conditions on the other end. So they have to be very, very careful about managing that risk. And if they don't do it properly, they end up financing the project. Now, by no means are the subcontractors the only people that have to bear a lot of risk on a construction project. General contractors do too. Owners have a lot of bargaining power, especially now. So they also include one-sided contract provisions that GCs want to pass down to their subs. And suppliers have to occasionally deal with terms and conditions and purchase orders that are given to them that would change their terms and conditions in their credit application that they have to review and make a decision on. So everyone in the construction process has to deal with various one-sided contract provisions. The important thing for you to understand is that you need to make sure that you read your contracts, you understand what those contract provisions mean, and that you don't just give up. You try to make changes over time to your contract provisions. And I would say most importantly, if it doesn't feel right and the contract terms plus the relationship plus the finances on the job, if they don't add up, you are better off walking away from a job that you think is not going to end well than taking a job with one-sided contract terms that may actually risk the finances of your business. So let's get right into it. What is the scariest contract provision? When clients come to us and they hand me a stack of paper and it's anywhere from 20, 50, 150 pages, and it's this contract that they want to review, they say, Alex, I really want to get this job. It's very important to me. It's a great job. It'll set me apart from my competition. I want this in with this developer or contractor. So only make the absolute minimum changes that you need to make. And over the last 20 years of doing this, I would tell you that if there was one provision, if I could only change one provision in a contract, this would be the one that I would change. There are lots of other ones I would want to change, but this is probably the one that is the most dangerous. And that is the obligation to continue working even if you are not paid. Now, this provision exists in some prime contracts, meaning an owner could put a provision like this in its contract with the general contractor. This type of provision exists in almost every subcontract we see, meaning most general contractors are going to demand that their subcontractor continue working even if they have not been paid. Suppliers, not so much. Their credit app typically says that they don't have to, if they're not paid, they can stop extending credit and stop delivering. With one exception, and that is sometimes subs send purchase orders with terms and conditions to suppliers, and those terms and conditions in that purchase order will be valid and enforceable if that purchase order is filled without those terms and conditions being objected to or modified. So be aware that this provision could exist in many different places. Here's a sample of what this provision looks like. I took this from a general contractor's contract. Subcontractors shall not be entitled to stop the work on account of a contractor's default, including non-payment, but shall proceed with the dispute resolution procedures in this agreement. So what does this mean? This means that if you as a subcontractor on this project are not getting paid, you have to keep working. You have to keep paying for supplies. You have to keep paying your labor. And if you believe that the non-payment is inappropriate, you have to proceed with the dispute resolution procedures in the agreement, which could include a mediation where you have to meet with the other parties. It may include arbitration, which is like a private court, which you'll have to pay for and takes time, many, many months, or litigation, which is you take the contractor to court. But what you have to know is that if you have a provision in your agreement that forces you to keep working even if you're not paid, and you also have a pay when paid provision, which almost certainly exists in your contract as a subcontractor, then the fact that the contractor hasn't paid you, if the contractor, him or herself, hasn't been paid by the owner, is not a default by the contractor. Meaning, you could say, "Hey, contractor, you haven't paid me in 3 months," and the contractor says, "Well, I haven't been paid in 3 months." That's not a breach of the contract. So even if you went forward with the dispute resolution process in the agreement, you would not necessarily prevail because they haven't done anything wrong. They haven't held back money that they've been paid because they haven't been paid themselves. So a provision like this as a subcontractor and as a general contractor is very dangerous because it could put you out of business. Because if you cannot continue to fund the job, you technically will be in breach. Let me add one layer of concern on top of this. If you are a subcontractor with a provision like this in your contract, and you also issued a payment bond and performance bond to the contractor, then not only do you have risk on the job if you're not getting paid, but the contractor could say, "Hey, look, you're in breach of the contract. We're going to make a claim on your performance bond because you are not continuing to perform, even though you haven't been paid, but that's not a breach on our part. And your bonding company is going to come and have to take over. And what are they going to do? Your bonding company, they're going to come after you under your general agreement of indemnity with your bonding company." So know that this is a very, very precarious position to find yourself in. So now the question is, what can you do about it? So let's take a step back and talk about how to make a change to a contract that's handed to you. Anybody that gives you a contract and you decide you want to make changes, there's effectively two ways to do it. You can mark it up by hand on the computer. So you don't like these 3 sentences, you can scratch them out. You can initial next to them. You want to add in another sentence, you can type it in and initial next to it, or handwrite it in. So that's okay, you can do that. We're seeing obviously more and more contracts being exchanged through electronic means, DocuSign and those types of services, which pretty much completely prevent you from making changes. And that, quite frankly, in addition to making it easier to manage the contract, that's another reason why contracts are being exchanged that way, because it prevents you from making changes. So what is the other thing you can do? You can create an addendum. This is better than marking it by hand. So how do you do that? So you're going to take a blank piece of paper in Word, and at the top you're going to write addendum. So that's going to be the title. And then you're going to say, this addendum shall modify and supersede any and all provisions contained in the agreement and all exhibits referenced therein between the contractor and subcontractor for this project. So if this is an addendum between a owner and a contractor, you'll say between an owner and a contractor. So now you're going to start writing in this addendum all of the changes that you want to make. So if you want to delete sentences, if you want to change them, if you want to add new provisions, you'll just list them all here. And then you're going to have it executed by all the parties. So if it's between the contractor and the subcontractor, everyone will sign it and you're off to the races. This addendum will be added to the contract. So you would sign the contract, and at the same time you would sign the addendum. So if we were to talk about this DocuSign example that I gave you, the way it would work would be you would get the DocuSign link, you would meet with or talk to the other party in the contract, come to an agreement on the changes you want via a proposed addendum, and then when they send you the contract back via DocuSign, it's going to be the addendum and then the contract documents, and then everyone signs the addendum and then all the other parts of the contract, and those get executed all at once. And then the contract, the contract in quotes, the document itself is the addendum with all of its parts. So what do you add to deal with a provision that forces you to keep working? Well, what do you want to do is in the addendum, you want to add a provision that gives you the right to stop work. So here's an example of one. Subcontractor may slow or suspend work if any payment requests have not been paid in full within 30 calendar days from submission. So this gives you the right to slow or stop work if you haven't been paid. Now, the contractor or owner may not agree to 30 days. Maybe they're going to want 45 or 60 or 90. The important thing is that it's not never. It's that there is some reasonable endpoint at which, if you are not paid, you get to stop work. The other thing to be careful about when they make a change is they may say approved pay requests. That you have to be careful with as well. And the reason is they may say, oh, you submitted a $100,000 pay request, we're approving $5,000. Well, that doesn't help you either, because now you've expended the money and are only getting a small portion of it to keep going. So you have to be careful about that trick too. So, there may be some negotiations around what this provision looks like. The important thing is that you have some way to stop work. It doesn't prevent the pay when paid, right? The pay when paid is still in effect. So if the owner hasn't paid the contractor and the contractor hasn't paid you, that's not a breach of the agreement. However, if you haven't been paid what you've been requesting, then you get to slow or stop work. So what other provisions are there in a contract that I would say are worth changing? So in my personal opinion, number one is adding the right to stop work if you're not paid. Number two is notice. Notice is very important. Having the right to be notified of issues and an opportunity to cure those issues goes a long way at solving problems. So here's a sample provision from a contract. It says, contractor shall be entitled upon 1 calendar day written notice to subcontractor to correct any deficient work or materials and deduct the cost thereof from any money then due or that may thereafter become due to subcontractor under this agreement, or at the election of contractor terminate the employment of subcontractor under this agreement. Now, this is notice, but 1 day notice is not 1 calendar day notice, right? So you get a notice Friday afternoon on a long weekend, and now you have 1 calendar day to solve this problem. You can't realistically solve any problem in 1 day. So so what's another way to deal with this is you want to be able to add more time to the right to fix. So here's a provision you could add to the addendum. Contractor shall provide subcontractor 10 calendar days detailed written notice to cure any performance issue or delay or claim, or before any payments are delayed or held back, or any amounts are chargeable to subcontractor. So what does this do? This slows everything down. It gives you, in this case as a subcontractor, time to fix any problems before the contractor can back charge you, make a claim for delay, supplement your workforce, hold back any payment. Again, this would also apply for an owner, for a contractor dealing with an owner. So again, looking back, if I had to make one change to a contract, what would it be? It would be to add the right to stop work if you're not paid. Number two, I would add a larger and more an ample opportunity for you to fix problems with notice in your contract. Those would be the top two changes that I would make. Now with that, Ariella, let us know if you have any questions, but while you tee up the questions, know that we have a podcast. That podcast comes out weekly. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Just look for The Lien Zone, L-I-E-N Zone, and subscribe. It comes out. Each podcast is about 20 minutes. We do these webinars every month, and the next one is on November 19th from 9 to 9:20. A subcontractor step-by-step guide to getting paid. You can sign up for all of these webinars at sunraynotice.com/education. And with respect to that, by the way, SunRay has a brand new website and software. Why don't you tell us about it, Ariella?
Well, thank you so much, Alex. I do want to share one quick thing. We snuck in one more webinar, which will send out Bankruptcy Happens, which will be November 6th. We're going to we're going to have a deep dive, as Alex likes to call it. The webinar will be conducted by attorney Jordan Rappaport, and we're going to go into bankruptcy issues. Unfortunately, it's prevalent today with what's going on with the economy. So traps to avoid, and it's going to be a really sensational webinar for you. But thank you. Yes, we just launched after 3 hard years of work. We have an incredible new website. In our website, we have a deadline calculator where you can track all of your deadlines. So not only can you create your own reminders in our system, Now our system will send you emails when your lien or bond claim rights are coming up. So for example, if you have a date and today's your last day on the job, you think it's your last day on the job, you can update it. If it's not your last day on the job, you can deactivate projects, you can, your waivers and releases of liens, that's a feature that we've always had in the system, but the waivers and releases of liens in the system, you can track everything, your notaries, how many, oh my goodness, I have to admit, I'm a little bit under the weather, so I didn't have all of my notes in front of me, so I apologize. But yes, we had 3 hard years of putting this website together. If you go to the website, sunraynotice.com, you go under the learning section, you can see all of your deadlines right there, of your general contractor, subcontractor, supplier. And we also, under the same section, you can look under deadline, and it gives you all of your deadlines. And then when you're an actual SunRay customer, we have these just extraordinary features. If anyone has any interest, feel free to ask me at any time.
So do we have any questions, Ariella?
You know, you did such a sensational job. I don't see any questions thus far.
But if anyone does have any questions, feel free to send Ariella or I an email. Our contact information is on the screen, and we'll get back to you right away. Ariella, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Alex, and I hope everyone has a great day.